Hey guys, welcome and ting. The other day I was thinking, you know what I mean? I'm interested in the history of Serbia, I'm interested in the culture of Serbia, food, party and all of that. What about the political side of Serbia? So we're going to watch a video here that's called Serbia's Election Result Explained. Vucic wins. Now, I know politics will cause a lot of animosity and fighting and all of that going on. But the idea of me watching this and reacting to this video here is that I want to learn about it. I want to know what's going on there because, as usual, I'm looking for the similarities in what I'm experiencing here, what you experiencing there, what we experiencing on the island where I'm from, or even down in South America. Because when you really break it down, nobody's really doing anything different. You understand what I'm saying? When you come to party tricksters, they're not really doing anything different. To a certain, they could talk about different systems, communism, capitalism, socialism, this ism, that ism, this schism. What it boils down to is that there are human beings living there. Do we react the same to these things? How do we look at what's happening? And so comment down below and tell me what you think is accurate about this, because you have to take into consideration who's making the video and what is not accurate about it. No name calling, no arguing, no fighting. This is not what this channel is about. This channel is about understanding each other, all right? So let's just sit down and have a conversation about this if you so inclined. Let me learn about you. And hopefully in this video, I could tell you stuff from my experience that we could find some kind of common ground, you know what I mean? Because we got to find some kind of worldwide solidarity thing going. Let's YouTube and simmer and see what they say about the results of the Serbian election. By the way, elections is coming up in America in November the 4th, and things are heating up. Things are heating up here, man. You know what I mean? So I'm gonna watch a little videos about this, and I'll tell you all what I want and thing here. You know what I mean? Let's go ahead and watch this.
This video was brought to you by Henson. On Sunday, Serbia went to the polls for its third parliamentary election in just 4 years. These snap elections were called by incumbent President Aleksandar Vucic in November and were framed as a referendum on his presidency, despite his resigning as party leader last month. In good news for Vucic, provisional results suggest his Serbian Progressive Party both won nationally and held on in the local elections in Belgrade, although the opposition is currently disputing the results. So, in this video, we're going to look at why Vucic called the elections, the results, and what another Vucic victory means for Serbia.
You see, like I said, this thing is worldwide, where somebody win an election and the opposition complained that there was improprieties done there. That's the same thing that happened in the 2020 election here. And the politics of it is not what I'm looking at really. I'm looking at the human aspect of it. Why do people think that, and what do they want to happen? And I'll be honest with you, it's kind of crazy here. It is crazy here. Here's something I want to ask. Is there conspiracy theories intertwined with Serbian politics? Because here, there's a whole faction of people believing that certain dead people are going to come back, and they're not really dead, come back and rule the country. Is that the same in Serbia? Is that the vibe there? Is people thinking differently there? Is it more of a on the real level instead of the conspiracy level? No. You got to look at the different factions of conspiracies, you know. A conspiracy could become very fantastic when they're waiting for a dead person to come back and rule. Or a conspiracy could be where the elections was rigged. This is what happened, and people are saying that's what happened. It's based on real life vibes, you know what I mean? Let's keep going.
Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos.
So, before we get into the results, Let's start with a bit of context. Serbia basically has two sets of national elections, presidential and parliamentary. Sometimes these happen simultaneously, but most of the time they're held separately because the Serbian president is elected for a 5-year term, while Serbian MPs are normally elected for 4-year terms, although it's worth saying that snap elections are very common in Serbia. Parliamentary elections, which are what happened on Sunday, use a nationwide proportional representation system with a 3% vote threshold to elect the 250 deputies of the National Assembly. Sunday snap elections were called in early November by incumbent President Aleksandar Vucic after...
Okay, before you continue, for me, the makeup of the political system is kind of confusing, but I know the basics. You have House of Congress, the Senate, and then of course you have all these local state representatives and things like that, people who run the state. Uh, Nationally speaking, people vote in people that they think represents their interests. And it's gotten to the point where their interest isn't, how should I put it? It's more cultural than it is, and I hate to use the term political, but let's just say it's more cultural. Things like it's based on morality. Of course, morality is subjective or objective, no matter how you look at it, but it's just also people see the worldview. So there's a lot of that. It's like morality based instead of based on higher wages, better healthcare, better school system. And even if they talk about better school system, it's about indoctrinating people into believing the way they believe instead of people being free thinkers.
After roughly a year of escalating tensions between Serbia and Kosovo. We've covered the ongoing Serbia-Kosovo crisis in more detail in other videos, but the TLDR is that while Serbia and Kosovo have never really got on, tensions began escalating in mid-2022 when Kosovo authorities tried to get ethnic Serbs living in northern Kosovo to use Kosovo license plates on their cars. Despite a moment of optimism earlier this year when it looked like the EU had mediated a deal, things got worse in May, when fighting broke out between ethnic Serbs and NATO peacekeeping forces after Kosovo authorities tried to install newly elected mayors. For context, ethnic Serbs in Kosovo boycotted April's elections, which meant that ethnic Albanian politicians were elected even in majority Serb areas. At the same time, Vucic was having domestic problems in Serbia itself. Serbia is also dealing with high inflation, which reached 8% in November, and in May, there were 2 unprecedented mass shootings, one in a school in Belgrade and one a day later in eastern Serbia.
Okay, the other mass shootings in your schools there too, he said it's unprecedented, which means it's rare, because that's like an epidemic here. And not just mass shootings in school. Yesterday, there was a mass shooting in Pennsylvania where this guy broke into a house and he was killing family members. I don't know if they caught him yet, but they had to cancel St. Patrick Day festivities because he was on the loose. Because after killing those people, he hijacked somebody, he carjacked somebody, and I think he hurt that person too. But I think that it seems that people in the rest of the world deal with it differently than here. Like as you could see, people get angry and they rioting and stuff. Yeah. What do you guys think about that? About people rioting and stuff. Here, uh, people don't just riot; they loot. People loot there. They break into like stores and start taking stuff whenever there's a political upheaval. Because it seems like here that happens, and it happens in the rest of the world too. You know what I mean? I know in my country, whenever we have political upheaval, there's usually a little bit of looting that come with it. But however, it's been a long time since we had any looting. I think the last bit of looting we had was in, good Lord, the 80s, early 80s or something like that. I don't think we've ever had an issue like that uh, happen. But that's what politics does, man. It leads people to do things like that, especially if people are struggling to make ends meet. 8% inflation. How is that now? What is being done to fix it? Do you think anything is being done to fix it? Now, I don't know anything, and let me preface this real quick. I have no understanding of the situation between Kosovo and Serbia, so I'm not gonna dare talk about that. I don't know anything about it. Teach me. And he mentioned Albania too. I had somebody from Albania commented, "Are you scared to react to videos on Albania?" I don't know anything about Albania. I react to stuff about Albania because I don't know about Albania. And I like to hear the story from both sides, not just one side. You understand what I mean? So let's just get that out of the way and I'm going to repeat it. I have no understanding of the conflict with Kosovo and Serbia. Somebody says that you don't understand it, so you shouldn't talk about it. Why shouldn't I talk about it or try to, well, not so much talk about it? Why shouldn't I want to learn about it? Because if I learn about it, once again, I'm going to go back to this. Other places in the world might have similar issues going on. And maybe we could learn something from each other and figure out how we could stop the issues from happening. Because from everything that I've seen, the issues have been caused by outsiders coming in all over the world. Be it in Africa, where the Europeans came in and took territories, the Dutch, the English, the Spanish, the French, which created conflicts with the native people. And a lot of the places that we names of the places that we know now weren't the native names of the places. Like I remember Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe. You know what I mean? And even okay, like for instance in India, uh, with Pakistan and India, there's a conflict there about who owns the land, who owns what. But that's because the colonial powers come and say, we're gonna separate you guys. You stay here, you stay there. You know what I mean? Now, I don't know what was going on there before that happened, if they were fighting and stuff like that. But if an outside power come in, there's going to be a grab to get stuff because whoever sides with the power that's there is going to get the most because that's what they're going to maintain power. They also maintain power by segregating or separating the people, causing animosity around with the people. You know what I'm saying? So who wins in the long run? Because if we're fighting against each other, then who is in power is the puppeteer. You know what I mean? Let's get back to this.
These triggered massive protests, which quickly spiraled out into a wider anti-government movement demanding media freedom, a ban on tabloid media, and the dismissal of certain government officials, including the head of Serbia's state security agency, Aleksandar Vucic, who resigned in November after being hit by American sanctions. The protests, now known as the Serbia Against Violence protests, were supported by various anti-Vucic opposition groups from both the left and the right, and continued intermittently until December. It was in this context that Vucic called for snap elections, Serbia's third in the past 4 years. In addition, the government also called snap local elections in 65 cities and municipalities, including, most notably, in the capital Belgrade. Broadly speaking, there were 3 groups contesting the elections. First, we have the incumbent coalition, led by the Serbian Progressive Party, or SNS, which is in turn fronted by President Aleksandar Vucic. Vucic and the SNS have dominated Serbian politics since coming to power in 2012, when Vucic split from the Nationalist Radical Party. While Vucic actually stepped down as SNS party leader last month after the protests, he's still been the face of the SNS campaign, and the campaign is essentially seen as a proxy vote for his presidency. Vucic and the SNS are often described as populist, and Freedom House describes Serbia's politics as only partly free, due to the SNS's unjust control over Serbian media and the state apparatus. Unlike many other Eastern European populist parties, however, the SNS is nominally in favour of EU accession, but as the EU integration process has stalled, the SNS has increasingly foregrounded non-European actors, praising Russia and China, for example, as reliable partners. The SNS campaign focused on wage increases, infrastructure investments, and improving women's health services. Second, we have the main anti-Vucic opposition bloc, an ideologically diverse 15-party coalition called Serbia Against Violence, formed out of the mass protests earlier this year. While the coalition is generally more left-leaning than SNS, it includes conservative groups and focuses mostly on rooting out corruption and accelerating EU integration. Its two co-leaders are Marinika Tepic, a former journalist and human rights campaigner who's also the vice president of the Party of Freedom and Justice, and Miroslav Aleksic, president of the People's Movement of Serbia, who was a key figure in the opposition boycott of the 2020 presidential elections and campaigns against the independence of Kosovo as a precondition for EU integration. Third, and finally, we have a handful of other right-wing nationalist parties who are generally focused on aligning Serbia's foreign policy towards Russia, taking a harsher stance on Kosovo and social issues, such as opposing same-sex civil union legislation. Despite having relatively similar policy platforms, these groups fail.
You know, what I don't understand, what is the deal with not people going up against the gay people? That's their business. I am as straight as they come, but that's their business. What's the big deal? Just let people live. I'm around gay people, didn't turn me gay. If you are that, that's what you are. I'm this, that's what I am. Nobody could influence me to be what I'm not. Not even young kids, you can't influence them to be what they're not. And I'm not saying some people might not experiment, but they're going to be who they're going to be, regardless. Because that is such a innate feeling. But do I believe that people are born that way? I think so. I think so. You know what I mean? And I've had people comment on the video saying, "Oh, those LGBTQ, they're not doing anything to me. Wars have always been here. Mother Nature is still blowing down trees. Always have. I remember back in the last election, 2020, when there were some hurricanes in Florida, people were saying it's God's punishment for the gay people and stuff like that. It's like, how do you know that? What gives you the authority to think that that's happening? Just let people live. You live your life. If they're not doing anything to harm you directly, because if you ask anybody who is against them, what have they done to directly influence or affect your life, your livelihood? They can't come up with one thing. So if they're not affecting you personally, financially, or anything like that, what's the big deal? Why? I don't understand it. I don't get it. You know what I'm saying? You're for it or you're not for it. That don't make no bloody sense. How are you gonna be for how somebody live if that person is not killing people, if that person is not hurting people, if they're just living their life and doing their own thing? How is that any of your business? How is that affecting you? Well, I don't want to see that. There's a lot of things we don't want to see. We should worry more about not wanting to see wars. We should worry more about not wanting to see people starving. We should worry about not wanting to see people be abused. That's what we should be worried about.
Failed to agree on an electoral coalition, which has apparently hurt their chances.
Oh, and by the way, before somebody said, "Oh, you're a liberal," I'm no liberal. I'm not conservative neither. I'm just a human being who wants to live and let live. Here's something: if your religion goes against that, and you believe there's going to be a judgment, how about letting God do the judging? Who are you to judge? Who am I to judge? I judge you if you're killing people. I judge you if you're abusing somebody. I judge you if you're causing starvation, because that's not humane. That's not being human. But if you're doing your thing, do your thing, as long as it's not hurting anybody. What's the big deal?
At this election, polling before the election suggested the main opposition bloc, Serbia Against Violence, was unlikely to win nationally, which is why they focused their efforts around the capital, Belgrade. Home to a quarter of the population and more than half of its GDP, Belgrade is generally more liberal than the rest of the country, and victory here would possibly provide the opposition with a political base and potentially pave the way to national rule. So let's get into the results. At the national level, the SNS emerged victorious, winning 46.6% of the vote and a 129-seat majority in parliament. The Serbia Against Violence coalition won 23.3% of the vote and 63 seats, while the Socialist Party won just 6.6%. Finally, the right-wing NADA coalition won 5% of the vote, and a populist right-wing organisation, led by a YouTube conspiracy theorist, won a similar amount. Other small parties, mostly representing minorities in Serbia, scraped the leftover votes. This is a big win for the SNS, and it seems Vucic managed to draw voters away from the Socialist Party by attacking them during the campaign, in spite of the fact that the Socialists had previously supported the SNS in coalitions. Despite lagging well behind the SNS, the Serbia Against Violence coalition had an all-right night, and it seems their decision to run as a coalition has paid off, given that collectively they've never previously achieved more than 20% of the vote. In Belgrade, exit polls suggest that the SNS are on track to narrowly beat the opposition, but the Serbia Against Violence coalition dispute these results. They claim that an estimated 40,000 illegal voters were bussed into Belgrade from outside Serbia, including from Republika Srpska, the Serb-majority autonomous province in Bosnia and Herzegovina. At time of writing, Aleksic and Tepic are calling for a repeat election and have planned a protest for Monday evening. So what happens now? Well, unless the protests are sufficient to either garner international attention or pressure Vucic into a repeat election, it looks like Vucic and the SNS will continue to dominate Serbian politics for the foreseeable future, and both Tepic and Aleksic will be under pressure to resign.
I've been using Henson's products for a few months now, and I really...
Wow. It's like everywhere's got this political strife. I personally think we are on the cusp of everything changing. I do. I might not live to see it, but there's a turn going on. The demonizing of social media, I think, from where I'm living, don't know how it is in Serbia. I do not know what the social media climate is like there. But it's causing a lot of people to actually pay attention to a lot of things around the world that they normally wouldn't pay attention to, because there's so many different nationalities and ethnicities and all of that on there that it's hard to like corral people into one thinking, because they start to understand each other. Like YouTube and how I'm on here trying to learn about Serbia and Romania and Slovenia and and more about Africa, and I'm putting in my experiences and all of that into play so that people could understand me and I can understand them, thus understanding where I come from and me understanding where you are. And that's a good thing. People could maintain who they are and still learn about each other and respect each other. And like I said, as long as people aren't terrorizing each other, we could have some kind of synergy going on. As long as you're not terrorizing others, I'm cool with you. Once people start getting terrorized, I'm going to go, whoa. And I'll tell you straight up, even if in my country, my government decide to invade the other island because they have some conflict over oil or sea boundaries or something like that, I'd be like, well, what are you doing? There's enough for everybody. Contrary to belief, there's enough for everybody in this world. It's just certain people want to keep it all to themselves because they want the power to control people's minds. It's not a conspiracy. Just go back in history and it could tell you. It tells you that. That's what happens. Ain't nothing changed. We ain't doing nothing different. We just repeating the same crap over and over again.
really do recommend them from an economic, environmental, and shave perspective. Firstly, Henson's razors take entirely standard razor blades, which means instead of being forced to buy expensive replacement blades, including features you don't even need, Henson's razors cost about 10 cents each.
Okay, I think that was the end of the video there. But I'm not saying this for anybody to follow me or do what I say and all of that. Think your way. But when we deal with shit, let's break it down to the human element. Let's understand that we're not as different as we think we are. We all are going through the same thing. Higher prices, political systems that kind of in shambles all over the world. It's like hearing people complain about the cost of living and they call it Bidenomics. He's the one that's raising prices. Prices are going up all over the world. Where you are is not the world. So it's obviously a worldwide thing. So we have to figure out why that is happening. What is controlling, not so much who, but what is controlling the economies of the world to create this massive problem that's happening here. I hope you guys enjoyed this with me, and I hope please comment in the comment section certain things I'm ignorant of. Explain it to me. We could share stories. And if we share stories, we'll understand each other better. It doesn't matter if you're white, I'm black, that person is Indian, that person is Asian, that person is African. It doesn't matter because we all are going through the same struggle, especially if we're working class people, if we're just ordinary people trying to make ends meet, trying to get along, raise our family, be happy, be able to enjoy life, take vacations, go to festivals and stuff. Most of us can't because we can't afford it. And we can't blame another ethnicity, another nationality for that. That's just transferring our problems onto somebody else. That's the reason right there. It's the immigrants that's causing that. It's the blacks that are causing that. It's this person that's causing that. I think we're looking in the wrong direction. That's why it's so easy for people to get involved in conspiracy theories because they're not looking at the real world issues. They think if you slapping some morality stuff in it, then all is going to be well. No, you're slapping your idea of what morality is. What your idea of morality is, it might not be the same for Africa. It might not be the same for anyone else. And as long as their morality doesn't involve chopping people's heads off and all of that stuff, then we could. We could get along. Hey, somebody told me I'm looking for utopia. Nah, there's no such thing as utopia, man. No such thing. But there is such a thing as living, enjoying life, raising your family, being happy, being cool. You know what I'm saying? I'll leave a link in the description to this video. Like I said, drop the comments in the comment section. Teach your brother, teach your brother. And I'll spread the word when so people here can understand. So when something happens and they go, well, this, that, the other, I say, well, in actuality, this is the Bible thing. You all take care of each other, all right? Cool runnings.